Good evening, everybody. My name is Conor Kirwan, and I sit on the Wicklow Public Participation Network Secretariat. On behalf of the Wicklow PPN Secretariat and Wicklow Older People's Council, I would like to extend a warm welcome to everybody joining us tonight. We would like to thank our PPN members and the Older People's Council for working with us on this event and for all of you for sending in your questions. There was an overwhelming response, and with less than 2 hours at our disposal, it would be impossible to answer them all. So we have prioritised the questions that have had a recurring theme and will aim to get as many answered as possible. However, we have also sent all the questions to the candidates so they are aware of what's important to our communities, and if we run out of time and you still have a question you'd like to ask the candidates to be aware of, please email it into us and we will pass it on. We would like to thank all of the candidates from the municipal district who have joined us this evening. We appreciate your engagement with us and look forward to hearing about why you are running and what's important to you. Furthermore, we would like to thank Sarah Wetherold for agreeing to facilitate tonight's meeting. Sarah has been the resource worker with the Sligo PPN since 2018 and also sits on the PPN National Advisory Group. With over 20 years working in the area of policy and community development at a national and international level, Sarah has extensive experience in facilitating consultation and debate. Helen Cronin, who you all know well, will support Sarah with timekeeping and webinar support. Tonight's meeting will begin with each candidate providing us with some information about themselves. The candidates will be permitted 90 seconds maximum. It is important that candidates stick to this time frame to allow everybody equal speaking time and to ensure there's time for questions. A clock will run on the screen, and should candidates run over, we will mute them after 5 seconds. However, we hope we won't need to do that tonight. In corresponding with the candidates prior to this meeting, we have asked that where they cite facts or figures, they should also provide their information source and/or evidence base. Wicklow PPN and the Wicklow Older People's Council value diversity, and we operate on the principles of respect, equality, and inclusion. We expect that everyone on this call conducts themselves in the same spirit and respects those values. However, in the unlikely event that dialogue should become insulting, abusive, incendiary, or otherwise inappropriate, we reserve the right to remove the perpetrator. It is the role of the Wicklow PPN and Wicklow Older People's Council to support our members to have their voices heard. We do this in the most part by making supportive connections. We look forward to making connections this evening that we hope will be beneficial for everyone now and into the future. Please be aware that we are recording this session and we will make it available to our members who are unable to join this evening. However, you've heard plenty from me, so I would now like to pass the meeting into Sarah Wetherold's capable hands. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Conor. So Conor's outlined there the very clear ground rules for this evening, and this is to make sure that we're able to have a respectful discussion about these very important topics. I, for one, and I'm sure everyone in attendance, is looking forward to hearing from the candidates and hearing their responses to the questions that have been raised through members of the PPN and also through Wicklow Older Persons Council. To remind you, the candidates have been provided with these questions in advance, and I'm sure there are some that they will be very passionate about. But we do need to ask candidates to keep their responses brief and on point, and this will allow us to give everyone equal time to speak, and it will ensure that members' input is honoured. And I guess there won't be time for debate around these questions. It will be very much the questions asked, your response, and then we move on to the next person and the next set of questions. So as Conor outlined, we're going to start the evening by giving each of the candidates an initial minute and a half to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about why they're here, why they're running, what they stand for, and also which political party, if any, they are affiliated to. And in order to, for fairness, we're going to operate this evening in alphabetical order. So on this basis, the first candidate that I am going to go to for their 1.5-minute introduction will be Kieran Burke. And just to let you all know, there is one apology, and that from Aiden Kinsella from Sinn Féin. So for that introduction piece, we're going to start straight away. And so Kieran, I'd like to hand it over to you for your 1.5-minute introduction.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Before I begin, can I just, first of all, offer my condolences to the family of Molly Dempsey, whose funeral is taking place tomorrow, as you know, the young girl who died tragically here in Baltinglass. So just wanted to put that on record first. My name is Kieran Burke. I'm currently the principal of Glennon Community College. Born, raised in Baltinglass. I have worked in Dunlavin School in St. Kevin's for 16 years. I've been principal of Blessington Community College for the past 13 years. I've also had to emigrate. I was in America for 11 years in New Jersey, and I'm 40 years in education. Actually, this is my 41st year in education. So I just want to also compliment and pay my thank you to Patsy, Glennon, who put me in this position, I suppose, asking me would I be interested in running. And my priorities, I suppose, I've always had a keen interest in helping people. And I've a very strong interest also, in particular, in the area of mental health. And as a principal, I've seen firsthand the number of students who come to me on a daily basis, and indeed parents who crying out for help in that area. And that's one of my priorities. But also I'm heavily involved in sport. And as many of you know, that I'm involved in Baltinglass GAA and so forth, and supporting initiatives to help those facilities.
I'm sorry, Kieran, we've had to cut you there. As we said, this 1.5 minutes is absolutely cutthroat, especially when you've got such passion, but hopefully we'll be able to hear elements of that as we ask the questions later on. So that gives the other candidates a taste of how quickly that time goes. So I'm next going to move to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all for inviting me here tonight to speak to all of you. It's lovely to meet you. My name's Conor Byrne. This is my first time running. I'm the Sinn Féin candidate for the north section of West Wicklow, so the Baltinglass, Blessington area. I've spent my entire life in the area. I've grown up here. I'm still in my family home. I was educated. My primary education was in St. Bridget's, and then I did my secondary and third level education in Dublin. But I've always lived here, and I've always come back here for community reasons, and I've never moved outside of the area. And the main reason I wanted to get involved in politics was that I'm sadly the last of my friend group to be able to remain in the country. And I do genuinely think that Ireland, geographically and politically, we are in the best position probably out of every country in the world to make a perfect society. We have very few natural disasters, and we're very insulated from all the war-torn areas of the planet. But we just need to fix a few social issues. I would have a heavy emphasis on housing, which would be the main reason that all of my friends have had to leave the country, and offering resources for the young and the elderly and disabled, and to try and create a very fair and accessible market for small businesses, which will allow prosperity in the lower reaches of society amongst the working class. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you. Perfect timing with just a second to spare there. So next I'm going to go to Avril Cronin.
Thank you very much. Councillor Avril Cronin is my name. I'm a Fianna Gael councillor here for the Baltinglass Municipal District. Dunlavin native, born and reared here. I went to school in Dunlavin, both secondary and national school. I have a degree in politics and public affairs from UL, and a master's in public affairs and political communications. I've been working in politics since 2011, working across a range of government departments as an advisor in the Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture, and I'm currently working for the Cahirlock of Shannon. Like all of us, I take great pride in West Wicklow, and I strive to make a real difference. Born and reared here in Dunlavin and living here all my life, my family are ingrained in the local area, and I'm passionate about where I live and where I come from. Over the past 5 years, I have had the privilege of serving as the representative and champion the interests and aspirations of the people of Baltinglass. I have dedicated myself to the principles of honesty, accountability, transparency, and effective governance. Since my election to Wicklow County Council, I've worked tirelessly for the communities, the length and breadth of the district, working alongside community and voluntary groups, sports clubs, schools, residents associations, as well as many families and individuals. I'm acutely aware of the challenges our communities face. Access to adequate services and improved infrastructure are vital for our district. I've been a staunch advocate for these issues, tirelessly lobbying for increased funding and improved maintenance and development of our roads, schools, infrastructures and public amenities.
Just got those last few words in there, were brilliant. That's great. Okay, so next I'm going to move to Patsy Glennon.
Am I on?
You're on, Patsy.
Okay.
Take it away.
Thank you very much. Look, I'm going to start by welcoming the 5 new candidates that are running. It takes a bit of courage to put your name forward, and you're more than welcome to joining the pitch, as the fella says. I'll start with Deirdre, who I know. Second is Conor Byrne, who I don't know Conor, but I knew his father. Aiden Kinsella, who can't join us tonight. Kieran Burke, who's a good colleague of mine, and I know Kieran from the Board of Management in Blessing, and Peter Stapleton, who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but you're all very welcome. It takes a bit of courage to put your face up on a poster and put yourself out there for abuse and everything else. My name is Patsy Glennon. I'm a barrister at law. I'm a former guard inspector. I was the sergeant in charge of Blessing for 14 years. So I know the needs of the town quite well and the needs of West Wicklow. I ran last time for my first time and I got elected, and I was very grateful to the people of West Wicklow for having elected me. And we had a very good council in the last council. All 6 councillors worked exceptionally well together, and Vincent Blake will be a serious loss. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm hoping that all 5 of the sitting councillors will be returned and that one of you will fill the vacancy. That may not work out like that. Any of us can lose our seat. But it's going to be an interesting competition, and I wish you all the very best, no matter what the outcome. Thank you.
That's great, Patsy. Thank you. So next up is Deirdre McCormack.
Hi, my name's Deirdre McCormack. I'm the Social Democrats candidate for the local election here. I live in Blessington with my family. I've got 3 young kids, all under 8, so there's never a dull moment here. Originally, I was a stage manager. I worked in theatre for 10 years, and then I went back and did a master's in animal behaviour and welfare, and I worked in Dogs Trust as the adoption advisor there. We moved to Blessington almost 8 years ago, just after my daughter was born, and I was a stay-at-home parent for 6 years. And during that time, I started the Community Pool for West Wicklow campaign. And through that, I've worked with Water Safety Ireland and Swim Ireland and Wicklow County Council and all of the sitting councillors and TDs. And our biggest accomplishment with that was we brought a pop-up pool to Blessington for 3 months. And we had 600 children a week having the opportunity to learn how to swim while it was here, which was amazing. So I've worked with Jennifer Whitmore, who is the Social Democrats TD for Wicklow. I've worked with her for almost 2 years in a part-time capacity, and my job with her is to bring local issues to her attention so we can work together on supporting the community here, you know, with public transport, school places, healthcare. And that really ties in with what my priorities for the district are. I want to work with the community. We can achieve amazing things when we work together. The job of a councillor is to be that bridge between the council and the community, and that's all encompassing. And I basically want to work with the community to make West Wicklow the amazing place that I know it is and can be. So thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Okay, next up is Anthony McNulty.
Hello everybody, my name is Anthony McNulty. I'm the People Before Profit candidate for the Baltinglass area. Who am I? I'm 49 years age. I'm a dad to a 9-year-old son. I'm a herbalist and an adult educator. I've lived here in Parkridge in southwest Wicklow for 20 years, so I'm still a blow-in. And I'm the former trainer and member of the Shillelagh First Responders, and I'm currently on my son's Parents' Council. I've always been on the Parents' Council for 5 years now. I'm the ex-chairman of the Tullow Vintage Club. I was chairman there on the Tullow Vintage for quite a long time, and I have a big passion for vintage vehicles. And In 2018, I became involved with Moilisha Hill, which is a hill behind my home. I started looking into rumours of prospecting and lithium mining, the potential of lithium mining up there. And in 2021, I became the founding chairperson of Moilisha Hill Committee, a group who put a lot of pressure on a lot of bodies around Ireland to look after Moilisha Hill. I'm on the board of Communities Against the Injustice of Mining. I have a big interest in community empowerment, and I developed the DIY for Women course, which is I present in Askamore Community Centre, and I also present a herbal medicine course, and I'm also a GAA trainer. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Anthony. And I just see from your background then, I'm so delighted I'm not the only family with elves on the shelf still randomly scattered around the house in May. So that's great to see. That's brilliant, Anthony. Okay, next up is John Mullen.
Evening all, and thanks for organising the evening. My name is John Mullen. I'm a councillor from a native of Tinnahealy in southwest Wicklow, and I'd like to pay tribute to Vincent Blake, my friend and colleague, who's also retiring, and also to Pat Dorn, a former councillor who died in the intervening years. It's been a very eventful 5 years as a first-time councillor, I think, for all of us. I think the world has changed. We went through COVID. We went through a lot of things, but we still kept working away as a community. I'm a background in community activism and working with community groups to deliver facilities, whether it be in tourism, whether it be in recycling centres, or whether it be in housing supports. I know we'll be talking a lot about the issues tonight, and thanks for sending us the questions. So I won't refer to those issues that we're going to be talking about later, but I do want to thank all the colleagues here that are joining us this evening. I look forward to an active debate, and that we listen to each other and try and work together, because it's a pretty crazy municipal district. It's 75 kilometres long from the borders of Wexford right up to the borders of Tallaght. So it's a very unusual district in that regard. So I'd like to hear the views of everybody here this evening as we go forward. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant, Jan. Thank you. Okay, so next up we have Gerry O'Neill.
Thanks, Sarah. Could I just mention there that it's telling me here my signal is unstable, and it has been. You're cutting it out. And secondly, I have to leave here by 10 to 9 this evening, so apologies there. Firstly, Gerry O'Neill is my name. I'm a sitting councillor. I was elected 10 years ago, and I've been involved in politics really all my life. I live here in Butterhill in Blessington with my wife, 5 children, and I don't know how many. I'm trying to think here how many grandchildren, but anyway, I think it's 6 or 7. But I as I say, I've been involved in politics all my life. I was a member of a political party, Sinn Féin, for a long time. I joined there as a young lad in 1971. I got completely disheartened with party politics, almost 10 years ago now, and decided to go as an independent. I was completely, I felt that party politics is very much control, and you don't have that freedom, especially actually in rural areas. You don't have the same freedom of expression and help than if you were being caught up with a political party. So my interests really are the GAA, any sport really, but I'm really involved in the boxing, and I'm running out of time.
You are. It's caught up with us again, Gerry, but I'm sure we'll hear about some of those interests as you talk in the questions later. So next is Peter Stapleton.
Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Stapleton. I'm 27 years old and I live in Tinnahealy. I grew up in Green Ann on the side of a hill, on the other side of a hill to Tinnahealy, but my mum is from Tinnahealy and moved back here a year ago, having studied business and law in Dublin, training as a chartered accountant, moving to London, and then finally finding my way back to Tinnahealy, which is just near Hackettstown, where my great-grandfather, John Duffy, would have founded a business there, Duffy the Hackettstown. And one of the really nice parts of going around door to door all around the area has been meeting people who know and remember that business and the family so fondly. So now it's really about just doing my bit for the area. Vincent Blake's been a sitting councillor in Tinahely for 26 years, as John alluded to. He's decided not to run again. So I put my hand up to be part of the next generation of politics, looking to make West Wicklow and South Wicklow an attractive place to live for all generations, but particularly for younger generations who are looking to move home, put down roots. Hopefully some of those friends like Conor of mine that have moved abroad will come back, and making sure that it's a vibrant place to live. Outside of politics, I run a landscaping business that my dad started 40 years ago, run it with my sister and competitor, and play a little bit of GAA on the side.
Perfect, Peter, right on time. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we have Edward Timmins.
Hi, thanks for inviting me here this evening. My name's Edward Timmins. I'm from Baltinglass, and I've been a councillor for 20 years, so I'm kind of the elder lemon among the group here. I'm originally qualified as an engineering graduate from Trinity, and then qualified as a chartered accountant, and worked in business for, I suppose, 30 years or more over the last kind of 40 years. I'm a member of Fine Gael as well, and representing Fine Gael in this election. And I'm really looking forward to have the opportunity to serve the people of West Wicklow again after serving them for the last 20 years. What I've learned over the years as a councillor is primarily how to get the best, extract the best from Wicklow County Council in terms of resources to this part of the county. I've succeeded in increased funding for this area, and I just generally, after my years, I've learned how to make the officials in Wicklow more accountable to the public in West Wicklow by, asking correct questions and probing them, and constantly making them conscious of this area, as my other 5 colleagues have done, in fairness as well. I just offer a lot of experience, and I think I still have a lot more to offer, hopefully over the next few years. Thanks.
That's perfect. That's great, Edward. Thank you. From those introductions, I can already hear across all the candidates the passion that people have for the for Wicklow and the local community. I personally find it very exciting that there is such a broad range of backgrounds, ages, interests that have been mentioned already, and I think that can only be a win for the community, regardless of who goes on to be elected. It's great to see just that range of supports and interests that all of you are bringing to the table today. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about them as we move into the questions now. And just as a reminder, these questions were put together through a call out to Wicklow PPN and to Wicklow Older Persons Council. And they were all given the opportunity to put forward any questions that they would like to see the candidates answer. And the candidates were sent copies of all the questions. However, for the purpose of being able to move through this evening, those questions have been grouped. So where a number of questions around the same type of theme arose, they've been condensed to allow us to cover that breadth of issues that I know people are keen to talk about. It probably sound very formal as we go through, but I'm going to keep using the full candidates' names. And this is because these are the names that people will see on your posters and in your promotion. So I think it's important we keep using the full. So we're going to stick with the alphabetical order. So we're going to be starting again with Kieran Burke. So Kieran, the first question, and the question that's going to go to all candidates for this evening, is around support for community groups. So the first question is, how will you as a candidate support local community groups? And in answering this question, we'd like you to think specifically about about private estates and why it is that private estates taken over by the County Council in Wicklow must fund the upkeep of their estate, i.e. grass cutting, whereas estates in County Kildare get a grant towards their upkeep. So that first question to Kieran Burke.
Kieran, you're just on mute.
Kieran, you're on mute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can, Kieran, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose I said I'm at a disadvantage in that I'm going first with all of these questions, and all of the others have the benefit of more experience than I have. But I'll be brief. How would I support local community groups? Well, look, I've been a GAA coach for 11 years, growing up along with juveniles all along up to minor level. So I've been working in the community in that effect, in that capacity. As principal of Blessington Community College, I've also joined the Blessington Town team, and I'm part of that group. Also, a member of the West Wicklow Mental Health Association, just recently joined that, along with Councillor Mullen. And the West Wicklow Daycare Group, I've expressed an interest to join that committee as well. In relation to funding for private estates and cutting their own grass, look, I'd be a supporter of that. Having said that, not only grass areas, but going around from door to door, I've seen that communities there need tarmac on their driveways and in their estates as well, and that's a bigger problem than cutting grass. So
That's it, Kieran. Apologies, we've had to cut you short again. But I think you got a lot covered in that first minute and a half. So that same question then to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. For me, supporting local community groups would really be about enabling them with infrastructure to make sure that they have the spaces to meet and the resources to keep all of their special interests going. I'm working currently, myself and TD John Brady are working with the local rugby team and soccer team, because those two teams, unlike the Gael team, don't have their own pitch. So we really need to get involved with communities and make sure that each sort of group has a space in which they could meet and a space which they can come together. I'd often be talking to people on the doors when I'm canvassing about how I want to help the area and the entirety of West Wicklow to kind of maintain its personality and not just be a commuter area, so that there's senses of community within the area rather than it just be somewhere that people live so that they can commute to their job in Dublin. And to do that, you definitely need to create spaces for these people. And quickly, because I'm running out of time, to do with the taking over of private councils, I would see it as an oversight, and that if the council takes it over, they should provide for it as well.
Okay, that's great. Kind of just got in there. Okay, so that same question then on to Avril Cronin.
Thanks very much. But in relation to the private estates, as I said in my introduction, I've worked alongside many many housing estate groups and residents associations over my term as county councillor. And there actually are grants that are available to estates, and many of them I have supported in accessing this grant and securing funding. The Community Enhancement Grant is actually available to housing estates across the district that they can apply for. With regard to the manpower within the council they do have a responsibility to maintain the footpaths and the roads within the estates when they do take over these private housing estates. Again, as I said in the introduction, I've been involved in community groups the length and breadth of the district. And actually tonight, unfortunately, I do have a meeting at 9 o'clock with a community group here, so I will have to leave early, I'm afraid.
That's great, Avril. Thank you. So that question on to Patsy Glennon.
Thank you. First of all, I should apologise to Anthony McNulty. I didn't mention you, Anthony. I was going from the Blessed and Tidy Towns list of candidates, so my apologies. You're more than welcome to field also. Councillor Cronin has answered it fairly comprehensively insofar as that there is community enhancement grants that estates get, provided there is still a local authority house or a few local authority houses within the estate. That works well for most estates. It is not an issue that has really come before us as a council where people were complaining about that issue. But obviously, if it's an issue with people, they can bring it to their councillor and we can look at it as a group, a collective group, whoever is lucky enough to be elected into the next council. Thank you very much.
Okay, Patsy, thank you. So we're going to go with question 1 now to Deirdre McCormack.
Thank you. So as I said in my introduction, my background is community groups and community activism. That's kind of how I ended up here running for election. So I understand the importance of supporting community groups and working with them. And when we brought the pop-up pool here, that really displayed what happens when the council and a national governing body and a community group work together. So I think communication is key, support, letting groups know what grants are available for them, and letting them know when they're coming up, and kind of putting community groups into touch with each other, you know, through the PPN, or, you know, there's groups in Dunlavin that work well with groups in Blessington. So I think communication is key. Regarding the grass cutting, it has come up a few times on the doors, and I think, you know, Wicklow County Council doesn't do everything perfectly. Kildare County Council doesn't do everything perfectly. And I think we need to be looking at, you know, talking to our colleagues on other councils, and seeing what works there and what works here, and, you know, making changes, and maybe something, you know, like introducing a grant for cutting grass. I know there are ones available for social housing, but maybe we need to be expanding that or making it easier for communities to do that. Thanks.
That's great, Deirdre. Thank you. So we're going to go to Anthony McNulty now.
Hi, and thanks, Patsy, for your welcome. Community spaces are very, very important. They're great areas for collaboration and communities to come together and get stronger. That's what they're about. They're about where the kids play. It's where people socialise. So at the end of the day, what we need to do is, as councillors, we need to seek out funding to support communities and support the communities how they want to live. It's also our job to be guides, and it's our job to look at the community and say, we'll come down and help you. We'll get you started, and once we get maybe a committee started or a group that they can come together and bond through a shared space, that's where we need to show leadership. It's all about, you know, we can throw funding at it, we can find funding, we can give them funding, but unless the people are empowered through developing their own community, we will get nowhere. So it's not about handing it over to somebody else. It's about giving the empowerment to a community to fix it for themselves.
Brilliant, Anthony. Thank you for that. Okay, same question then to John Mullen.
What Avril said, but there are other ways of accessing funding streams for states, and as a member of Tinahely Tidy Towns, we liaise with all the states, both public and private, to try and access monies for various initiatives like grass keeping. I'd also like to just point out as well that the money we do provide to council estates wouldn't even cover the entire cost of cutting the grass over summer. It's a contribution towards it, and again, we're trying to identify new streams. As regards supporting community groups, that's essentially what we do as councillors. We try to identify different funding streams. So as secretary of the GA club here, I'm on the county board. I've been a founding member of the PPN here and of the West Wicklow Mental Health. So that's what we were trying to do, work with community groups to try and enable them, empower them, show them what funding is available, listen to them, and see what funding is not available. So that, again, the private estates do have a valid point, and we will try and work on that over the next couple of years. Thank you.
That's great, and thank you. So next we move to Gerry O'Neill.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Again, you have a very valid point there. I get at the doors, people would say to you, you know, they're paying their property tax. Why not the likes of the greens be cut? And it's a little bit unfair the whole lot, because in, say, for example, Blessington here, the first estate which was built in the town, going back a long time, St. Joseph's Road, that was a council estate. But now, because every household have bought out their house as a private estate, they're not entitled to any grants at all under the community enhancement. So that's a little bit unfair compared to, I know of another private estate, and they have one council house, and they are entitled to the grant. So it's a little bit urged, to tell you the truth there, and I agree with people who are concerned about that. I don't know, as other councillors have pointed out there are grants that are available, and you know, it's probably a backhanded way of improving things. You're really the benefit.
And we've had to just cut you there, Gerry. That was just your time up. So moving on, the same question to Peter Stapleton.
Yeah, thank you. With regards to community organisations and what councillors can do to support them, I think they can, to a certain degree, just provide funding and facilities. And that's a space to operate in, because there's such a great culture of volunteering and people who want to get involved and drive their own communities forward, that really it's just giving them the space to operate in. And you see that example with talking with people in Carnew about starting up a youth club or organisation. They had one that closed down because they didn't have a space, and they have a team of volunteers there ready to go. So, you know, they want to give back, they want to contribute, but it's just seeing where we can play a role to try and help them access that space and crucial startup funding to get up and running, and then let them do their thing that really is at the heartbeat of life in rural Ireland.
That's great. Just in time. Finished there. Okay. So I think we're going to just finish up on this round of questions with Edward Timmins.
Yeah, hi. A lot of it's been covered there, and I won't repeat it. Obviously, directing people towards funding that they're not aware of, but also there's other ways we can do it, like say the development plan that comes up every so often. We can look for certain areas to be zoned to help a community group. I did that myself in Baltinglass for the sports centre, for the basketball club, and other clubs in the town that could benefit. So there is other ways. Also, just getting them to talk to the right people in the council and getting the council staff to support them and lobbying in their favour. And also some national grants can be available as well, not just county council grants. As regards the specific thing about to pay for grass in Kildare, I didn't actually realise that, but as has been pointed out earlier, if there's any level of council housing in any estate, and most private estates these days do have it, then you can actually get funding. The other thing is to comparing Kildare and Wicklow. Wicklow doesn't charge for recycling. All other counties in the country do. So Wicklow is actually ahead of other places in that, if you want to start comparing counties. Thanks.
Thank you, Edward. So that finishes question 1 for all the candidates. So we're going to move on to question 2. And as stated, we're going to continue the alphabetical order. So we'll be going back to Kieran Burke for question 2 first. So question 2 is around social housing. And what the community would like to know is, as candidates, are you committed to ensuring housing for all, including older people and people with disabilities? And if elected, what will you do to try and achieve this? So that's going to Kieran Burke.
Thank you. Well, I'll be brief. From visiting on the houses, the doorsteps, and from talking to young people, and in particular a few of my friends, younger people who are trying to renovate houses, one of the things that I'd like to see a little bit more streamlined would be the derelict vacant property grants available to young people. I know that 2 people have given up on it and had to go without the grant because there was too much burden, too much red tape involved in it, so they had to go the longer route. I know that Laois, Kildare, Kilkenny and Cork and Dublin have gone down the route of cost rental homes, and over 650 million for over 3,250 cost rental homes. Over 12 local authorities have been granted. So I hope Wicklow would also probably get some of that funding so that people can afford homes and can get into cost rental 20 to 50% less rent than the market rate. So that would help as well.
Great, thank you, Kieran. So that question now to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, to say that social housing is a focus for not only myself, but also the broader party of Sinn Féin as a whole would be, to put it lightly. I think there's a general view that a lot of, especially young people, would agree with, that a lack of housing is the root to a lot of Ireland's social problems. It kind of breaks the social contract that if you're not able to house your family, how would you plan on having many children? Why would you continue to play by the rules? It leads to a lot of social issues. So I think our plan for the whole thing is just build, 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 and build some more. If you look back at all the most prosperous eras of most of the Western countries, like America in the 50s or pre-Thatcher England, you could see that a robust social housing system that the government was actively involved with was a very core sort of archstone for the housing market to maintain, that it's not just provided, but it also creates a more healthy market for people who are buying for themselves. Thank you.
That's great, Conor. Thank you. Okay, that question to Avril Cronin.
Yeah, thanks very much. Housing certainly is a hot topic for all ages, not only our older generation, but certainly our younger generation as well, that are trying to get on the property ladder, or families that are trying to move into their first home, whether it's social, affordable, or they're looking to purchase a private property. As well as our older people that are many are looking to downsize or looking at more accessible housing. And I think that really is something that I recently met with Care in Blessington and heard their concerns about independent living and the need for houses that in their own home. It's great to see that we do have our first affordable housing scheme in Baltinglass, the first in the district, but we certainly need more of those schemes across the district. And it is something that I've been advocating for since I became a councillor in Wicklow. Thanks.
That's great, Avril, thank you. So next, that question to Patsy Glennon.
Yes, social housing is obviously a priority for us all. Housing of every description is badly needed at the moment. It's an ongoing crisis, but we've all advocated an increased amount of social housing. We constantly raise it at council meetings, both full meetings and the municipal one. There is housing being considered or getting organised for Mountain View and Blessington, which will cater for people with special needs and for people looking to downsize. Again, it's Care has been involved in it. Councillor Neill and myself met with people from Care about it. Again, it's an initiative that was driven by Councillor O'Neill going back before my time at the council. But I mean, the bottom line is we all work together on these issues, issues that affect all our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Now moving to Deirdre McCormack.
Thank you. Yeah, so as everyone's mentioned, housing is a huge issue at the moment. I think, first of all, we need to do an audit of what houses we have available, what social housing is available, and see what properties are vacant and how we can get them back in, get people back living in these homes. And regarding, homes for people with disabilities and older members of our community, I think we need to talk to these people and find out, what is your needs? What do you need in a home? Because there's no point in us putting someone in a house that isn't going to fulfill their needs. They want their home. And this, we really need to listen to members of our community, and this needs to follow through in our planning. We're talking about building more and more homes, but it's not one size fits all. We really need to have different types of homes together within our community so that we can have people with disabilities, older people, younger people, first-time buyers, everyone living together as a proper community in homes that fulfill their needs. Thank you.
That's great, Deirdre. Thank you. Anthony McNulty, that question to you.
Yeah, we've got a lot of land banks that need to be investigated. These land banks need to be opened up and used for the development of either modular homes that can be fast-tracked to get young people into them or get people who need them. Also, I'm astounded as I'm going around the county at the amount of homes and buildings that are derelict, and they're just sitting there and nobody's using them. And we need to fast-track, and I echo what Kieran says there about the vacant homes, getting those grants, getting those streamlined, getting those properties retrofitted and getting them, particularly for people with disabilities who need to be, sometimes they need to be in towns or they prefer to be in a social setting where there's towns. So if we can get buildings that are in towns, retrofitted, reused, particularly look at areas as well above shops. These are huge areas where people can be living over shops, bring life back into our towns once again.
That's great. Thank you, Anthony. So to John Mullen next.
Yeah, and thank you. And again, I'll try not to repeat what colleagues have said, but yeah, housing is the #1 priority. This question is specifically on social housing. Wicklow as a county is one of the better performing counties in the country, and that can be fact checked with the Housing for All statistics in the delivery of new build social housing. I'm the only councillor here who's a member of the Disability Inclusion Strategic Policy Committee. We've published a strategy with targets on disability access. So all the houses we're building at the moment, for example, 20 in Shillelagh and 20 in Tinnahealy, are built to the universal access design spec, which means that they're accessible to people with all sorts of complex needs. And so, like I said, the delivery of social housing has been performed well, and in this district we've built more houses over the last 4 years than we have over the past 15. So I think we are ramping it up, but obviously more ideas and less bureaucracy will help. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So we're going to move to Gerry O'Neill now.
Yeah, well, I'm delighted there in actual fact on the housing issues there. I've been pushing this for a while that we have there are 12 units being built here. We hopefully they will start this year, as Patsy said there in Mountain View, and that would be the first lot of age-friendly housing that we have in this neck of the woods. So I'm delighted to be, to be pushing this on. Including those houses, included in those 12 houses will be some houses for people with disabilities, and also there would be a carers unit within that. So that's a great step forward, I think, and I'm looking forward to seeing the sod being turned there fairly soon. Also in the local area plan here, I put in a submission here that every new housing estate to be built in the area would include units for both the elderly and people with disability.
Thank you, Gerry. So next to Peter Stapleton.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear so much agreement across all of the sitting councillors and candidates that we need more houses. We need more houses of all types, social, affordable, private for sale, private for rent, different types of use for smaller units, bigger units, accessible for older people and those with disabilities. And great to hear some of the work that's been done there, looking to hopefully, if elected, continue along the same path. And talking of paths, I'm obviously walking along the same one as Anthony at the moment, because I've been shocked at the amount of vacant and derelict properties I'm coming across. So I think there does need to be a real understanding of why those houses are lying empty, why they haven't been sold on, why people aren't looking to develop them, and how the council can work to bring them back into use. Because not alone do you solve the housing kind of issue there, but also it's just an eyesore on our countryside having those properties lie vacant.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And Edward Timmins, you're the last to answer that question.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff is covered already, so I don't want to repeat that. In Blessington, there's also going to be approximately 110 houses built up in near the Avon re-site there up in Burgage that will be social housing, and that's a welcome addition. Blessington has a severe shortage of social housing. Wicklow overall has done very good delivery on social housing. Dunlavin, Baltinglass over the last few years have gained from new social housing, albeit unfortunately some of it is outsourced by the council to housing bodies, which means we have a less control over it. But that be as it is an addition of social housing which we all welcome. But the only other thing I'd say which hasn't been mentioned is there is very good grants for elderly for converting their houses, like for example downstairs, converting bathrooms into downstairs showers, stair lifts, grab rails, ramps. There is a really good grant system in Wicklow County Council to support elderly, and invariably these grants are granted.
Thank you, Edward. Okay, so now we move on to question 3. And question 3 is, what is your stance as a candidate on social inclusion? And how would you create a society within which everybody feels that they belong and can be comfortable, and a comfortable society that everybody can grow old in? So that question goes to Kieran Burke first.
Well, I think I have an advantage position here in this because in our school we have, just looking at it there, 48 different nationalities, and I suppose education is the key to reducing any barriers that people might have to differences between others. I think sports clubs as well, cultural workshops, music, it's a universal language. Sport is a universal language. cultural workshops are universal language, music is a universal language. So anything that the council can do to support these and to encourage participation of all nationalities. And it was very good to see in the St. Patrick's Day parades all the different nationalities represented in the different towns over there in the 17th of March. So that's great. And I think people are very welcoming here in Wicklow. And it's just to break down those barriers through education. And that's my job as principal.
Great, Kieran, and right on time that time.
Getting good.
That next question on social inclusion then goes to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I think it's an incredibly important question, and I agree with a lot of what Kieran said there. I think to kind of echo my previous response about supporting the social communities, I think a lot of what making people feel welcome in a community would be creating the space and resources for them to meet. Say if there was a group with a certain ethnic background or sexual orientation, so that they'd have a space that they felt safe in to meet with each other, but to not allow those spaces to become silos, to kind of build bridges instead of silos between the different groups of a community, so it all creates a more social cohesion with each other, and no one group ends up being viewed as the other or the outsider. There's a good example of that happening this weekend in Blessington, where the Tidy Towns Committee and the GA team are working together on a project for a cleanup, and I think that sort of thing would be the ideal situation to support amongst all groups, whether it's just to do with interests or background or anything like that. Thank you.
Great, Conor. So next we move to Avril Cronin.
Thanks very much. We certainly do need a more inclusive society. We need a society where everybody feels welcome and everyone feels included, and that they can participate in, you know, whatever activities they have going on in their area, and made feel welcome. One thing that we are lacking in West Wicklow is a community centre, and I do hope over the coming months and years we will have a new community centre where we can provide services for people, whether it's our youth, whether it's older people, marginal groups in our society, that will all be able to come together and provide services for them and make them feel welcome. Many of our grants actually within the council now do focus on social inclusion to encourage our community groups to become more inclusive. And this is particularly important as well, I think, in our rural areas, when we have new members of our communities arriving in. You know, it'd be nice to have a place for them to meet, to access services, and to make them feel welcome.
That's great, Avril, thank you. So that question now to Patsy Glennon.
Thank you very much. Obviously, social inclusion is very important for any function in society, and we all have to try work together in an inclusive way and to embrace everybody. It has been challenging for lots of communities in recent time with immigration and some of the difficulties that come with that, be it school places, be it health places, be it facilities in a community to cater for people, a large influx of people into small communities. So some communities feel very challenged by that. But I respect people's opinions, but I do think we all have to work together at making an inclusive place for us all to go forward in a constructive way. But it needs certainly attention from central government, which it is getting at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Over to Deirdre McCormack.
Thank you. So social inclusion is hugely important. We've nothing to gain by being a divided society, and our communities can only get stronger by celebrating the diversity within them. I think it was brilliant last year. Wicklow Pride celebrated their first ever Pride Parade in Wicklow, and it was fantastic. It just showed, you know, we're coming together of the whole community, and I was delighted to work with them that we were able to bring some of the merchandise from Wicklow Pride over here to West Wicklow and sell it in some of the local businesses. And I think we need more celebrations like this. I know the Dunlavin family group just had an event where they welcomed new members to their community into the community. It was a huge success. So more celebration, celebrate our diversity and working together so that we can be a stronger community. I think that is the way forward. Thank you.
That's great, Deirdre, thank you. And to Anthony McNulty.
Thank you. Yeah, we as Irish are fantastic at humanity. And we export humanity around the world by going out as NGOs like Trocra and all the NGOs. But when it comes to home, we're very poor at extending welcomes. We need to change that. And that's true, exactly as Kieran said, education, getting people involved, inviting them down. And we need to stop othering people. They're not another group. They are human beings. They're people we know. They're friends we haven't met yet. There's a lot of negative talk just because people are from a different area. We do it ourselves. I even did it myself. I called myself a blow-in after 20 years. We do it all the time. And unless we challenge that language, and unless we are the people as the people who are looked up to as councillors, unless we change our language and challenge that language that's wrong and challenge acts that are wrong, we won't change it.
That's great, Anthony. Thank you. And next we go to John Mullen.
Yeah, social inclusion is a part of what we do at Wicklow County Council. I know my colleague mentioned the County Development Plan earlier, but with the local economic and community plan here, which I'm holding up, it's blurred, but it's the plan that's will be delivering between 2023 and 2029, and all of us here contributed to that as councillors. And at the core of that is social inclusion. And so, for example, like in rural isolation, that's why we purchased Carnew Bank of Ireland, for example, through a town and village grant, and I was heavily involved in that project to turn it into a community hub for young and old in the community so that we can have facilities. And again, the only two CLAR areas, which are specific grants for areas that are rurally depopulated, the only two areas in the entire county are in Asnagap and Knocknana down in the southwest. So as a district, we have a lot to do on social inclusion, not just to do with old and young, but also rural isolation, rural depopulation, and rural regeneration. So I think that's the task of the next couple of years.
Okay, great, John. Thank you. Next, that question to Gerry O'Neill. You're just on mute there, Gerry.
Hey, have you got me there?
Oh, we have you now, Gerry. Yeah, work away.
Yeah, my signal is breaking a lot here. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Peter there a fair bit on this one here. You know, I'm not a kind of a lad that goes around flying a flag about inclusion and all that type of stuff. I think we should practice what we preach a little bit more, you know. I know that my involvement, whether it be in the GAA or the boxing, there's no issue with regards. You don't ask a chap his nationality or his religion before he goes in the door, or she for that matter, you know. But I do see a lot of, over the years I'm involved in the area, that there's a kind of, it's hard to move on. There's committees in place and they're there a long time and they're not really inclusive as such. Now, I was a founder member of the forum here in Blessington, but to my horror, I've seen the AGM only held here a while ago, and you had to register online. So I don't really believe that type of attitude is inclusion. I think we really need to open this up a little bit and practice.
Okay, Gerry, thank you. We now move to Peter Stapleton.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it has been covered, and everyone in agreement that social inclusion as a whole is a good thing, an essential thing really for our communities, for our society as a whole. And we should be aspirational in wanting communities and society where everybody feels they belong. That is very much at the core of what Ireland should be about. It will be a challenge, particularly with so much building in our communities over the next years. You know, people will change, people become used to their what exists at the current point in time, and people are always hesitant to change. But a big role in making sure that it is a positive change in West and South Wicklow is making sure that we have social inclusion at the heart of all we do. So absolutely pro for that.
That's great, Peter. Thank you. And finally, Edward Timmins.
Yeah, just briefly, John referred to the SICAP program. You know, it's a program over the next few years, and that in its acronym is social inclusion. It's totally geared towards that. A lot of grants as well. If organisations are looking for grants, if they have a social inclusion aspect to the grant, the chance of success are much increased. Just the only other thing I'd say is, from a personal point of view, if anyone helps me, or if anyone looks for help from me, it's completely irrelevant what background or that they have. I help everyone equally. Thanks.
Thank you, Edward. So now we move on to the fourth question. And this question is all around the climate. So Wicklow County Council has recently adopted its climate action plan. So the community want to hear from the candidates, what are the key actions in this plan that you would like to see implemented? So again, we're going to go back to Kieran Burke first for this one.
Yeah, thanks. The County Council has the Action Plan 24 to 29. And we're in Ireland under a legal obligation to reduce the greenhouse gases by 51% by 2030 and climate neutrality by 2050. Again, I'd like to see, maybe I've purchased myself a hybrid car, so maybe I'm glad to see that the tax on cars, on electric vehicles and on hybrid vehicles is much less. So that's one thing that I'm very thankful for. Again, grants, I suppose, for electric chargers are being reduced from 600 to 300 of the grant. I'd like to see maybe that increased. Warmer homes, Edward referred to it there, older people could avail of. The Warmer Homes grant is one thing that I'd like to see more information being put out to residents about, because going around the doors, people are unaware of the grants that are there. And there are a huge number of grants that the council have, but the amount of knowledge that people have on them is limited. So increase that awareness.
Thank you, Kieran. And that question to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. When reading through the plan, the thing that really jumped out to me the most that I was very excited about was the retrofitting scheme, and specifically the mention of the air-to-water heat pumps, which I'm a huge fan of. They're almost like a piece of miracle technology that's come about, and they're just getting cheaper and cheaper. And the reason that I'm so excited about it is that I think it's a way that people can see moving to a greener way of life doesn't have to always be about sacrifice. We had giving up the single-use plastics, constantly trying to recycle the cans, and the extra prices put on to fossil fuels. But with the retrofitting, people would find it easier to heat their home and keep warm with less effort. Especially in my area, a lot of homes are still heated with stoves, which require real physical effort to get your house warm in the morning. And I think with the scheme, people, not only will it be good for the environment, but it will mark a notable improvement in the quality of life of people's lives in the area, which I'd be very excited for. Thank you.
Thank you, Conor. To Avril Cronin now.
Thanks very much. Well, we have seen the rollout over the past number of months of our electric charging points through our towns and villages across West Wicklow, which I think is really beneficial, because since I became a councillor, numerous people have said to me that they have become more conscious about their vehicles and they were moving towards electric vehicles. But unfortunately in West Wicklow, we didn't have any charging points. So it's good to see that there are a number of charging points now throughout our towns and villages. Also, our public lighting is now moving to all LED lighting. Now, I know it will take quite some time to get around to all our lights, but any lights now that need to replace are being replaced with LED lights, which I think is hugely beneficial. Also, the council have taken a number of social houses for retrofitting, which I think is really important. Now, again, that is taking quite some time to roll it out across the entire district, as we have a huge number of houses, but it is a positive step in the right direction, as well as the SEAI home energy schemes that are available for private houses.
Thank you, Avril. Now to Patsy Glennon.
Patsy, you're on mute there.
Sorry about that. Yes, I'm on the SPC, the Environmental and Planning, and it's chaired actually by Edward Timmins for the last number of months. But we had an input into the creation of that plan, and we all worked tirelessly on it, trying to make the best plan possible for the county. Some things, I suppose, the age of people has a bearing on what to think about some of this new stuff. I think some of it might be excessive insofar as it's hard to get a bale of briquettes now, whereas everyone's promoting electric cars, etc., etc. I think we're heading in the right direction, but I also think there's some bits of nonsense attached to some of it, insofar as that I think we have to be practical about it. And people, for instance, the whole turf burning issue, people wanting to cut turf and all that, they weren't really criminals in the sense that they were being criminalised for doing it. And there's been a bit of a balance brought back into it, but it can be over the top. Thank you very much. Time is up. So.
Thanks. Thanks, Patsy. So we go to Deirdre McCormack next.
Thanks. So obviously climate action, you know, it's so important. Climate change isn't going anywhere. The Irish Times just reported today that we just had the warmest April on record, which is scary. Climate change is scary. And that's why it's so important that as councillors, we make sure that the climate action plan isn't just a box ticking exercise, and that, you know, we need to look at it. A big part of it that it was saying that it wants to make sure that we're all rowing in the right direction and in the same direction. And I think it's really important that we bring people with us. Public transport is a huge issue here in West Wicklow, and if we want to get people out of the cars, we need to make sure there's proper public transport. So that's something that we really need to look at. We need to be going back to basics and working with communities on local achievable biodiversity actions that we can be making, like community gardens, allotments. You know, we should look at groups like Go Greener with GrangeCon, the work that they're doing to help encourage their community to become sustainable and look at circular communities. So I'd be really passionate about working with those and making sure that the climate action plan is actually implemented properly. Thanks.
Thank you, Deirdre. And that question now to Anthony McNulty.
Hi, yeah, I very much agree with what was said there with a few of the participants. Allotments, community empowerment, grassroots initiatives. You know, it's very, very simple. We talked earlier about green areas. We can do an initiative called Leave an Edge, and that's where we leave a meter around community around green areas that are left for biodiversity. Again, the LED lights where there's bats. Also, the use of HVO, diesel and fuel for the all council vehicles. Obviously, because of my background with Moylisha Hill, I'm not an advocate of electric vehicles. They are extremely damaging to the environment. The recognition that we are getting stronger windstorms and higher rainfall incidents, and then we're getting heat waves. We need to equip our emergency services, such as the fire service and the council staff as well, to be able to respond to those adequately as well, to support help our communities in times of need.
That's perfect. Anthony, thank you. And that question now goes to John Mullen.
Some of my colleagues have been saying, and the other candidates, and I agree with most of them. For example, on the positive side of things, Wicklow County Council would fund recycling centres throughout the county. We have a community managed one here in Tinahely, which does a collection from Carnew. We should have really a community managed recycling centre in most of the villages and towns in West Wicklow, and that empowers community to also educate about what we need to do to recycle. We also have the amazing Pure project. I think we all know about Pure miles around the place now at the moment as we're postering and not postering places, but that's a fantastic project here led by Ian Davis, and Wicklow is a leader in that front. And again, it's tackling thousands and thousands of tons of illegally dumped waste. Wicklow is being a victim to that for decades, and everybody here knows that. So they're the type of positive things we're trying to do. So I support all those projects, and we need to kick them forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And now to Gerry O'Neill.
Yes, sir, thanks. Well, of course, naturally, I'm all for climate change and whatever, but I would be. I think there's double standards here as well. If you, as Councillor Glennon pointed out there a minute ago, you know, there was 400,000 tonne of peat exported to Germany last year from Ireland, and look at the amount of diesel that used to get it from here to Germany. 400,000 tonne of Irish peat, and yet you can't burn a sod of turf in your own country. Issues like that, or the farming community with their slurry, the limits on slurry they can keep on their farms, otherwise they have to get grants or whatever for slurry storage, and then a lot of that is exported, again using a lot of fuel to get it to Europe and back again, and they come back in bags of nuggets, and you can actually spread that on the same land that you couldn't spread your slurry on. So there's a lot of stuff there that I'd be skeptical of.
Thank you, Gerry. And that question now to Peter Stapleton.
Yeah, I think that document, the Climate Action Plan, is a really impressive, plan for what the County Council and what individuals within Wicklow need to be aspiring to do in playing our part in the climate emergency. But I do also agree with that it needs to be rooted in common sense, because if we're to progress with the plan, people need to believe that it's working and that it's not hypocritical. And with that, the only slight concern I'd have around the language within the plan around a model shift from car use to public transport. And I think Deirdre's right to highlight the need for public transport in West Wicklow. But there also needs to be an acknowledgement that cars are our primary mode of transport, particularly around South and West Wicklow at the moment. And we can't have a situation where it's becoming more difficult to use our primary mode of transport when other available transport isn't working either.
Thank you, Peter. And again, finally on that question, Edward Timmins.
Just as Patsy said there, we as part of German Planning SPC, we implemented this and went through this at meetings and went through it at full council meetings as well as our SPC meetings. So Wicklow has actually been one of the leading counties in the country to implement a climate action plan. And we also, at the start of the last council session 5 years ago, we put in what's called a special SPC, Special Policy Committee, to cover this area. And so Wicklow has done done a lot in this area. Personally, public transport is clearly a big thing, and the local links now have been a big boost to this area. And the other thing which I proposed and got into the county development plan was the extension of the Lewis. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow, but it is an aspiration. We need to have the extension of the Lewis to Bleston. It's only 8 miles from Bleston to Saggart, and that could take a lot of cars off the road from going from Bleston up to Dublin and have a park and ride in Bleston. That's something we should aim for. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. So we're moving on to question 5 now, and we're continuing on that similar theme. So I guess the overarching question is, what are your environmental priorities if you get elected? But West Wicklow Environmental Network have identified that they're particularly concerned that candidates support such issues as rural transport, greater oversight on hedgerow cutting, and better management of upland habitats. So in thinking about these kind of topics specifically, how would you support these issues if you were elected? So again, Sarah, that goes...
Sarah,
yes, Gerry?
As I said at the beginning, I have to leave here now at 10:09, so apologies for that.
That's okay. Gerry, are you... Yeah. So Cronin, you can remove your things. So thank you so much for taking part, Gerry. It was great to hear what you had to say.
Thanks a million, and could I wish all the candidates all.
Absolutely, Gerry. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go straight back to Kieran Burke on that question around environmental priorities.
Thank you. Yeah, rural transport, as Edward says, the Lewis to Bleston would be a great service, and more frequent bus services in rural areas, in particular times as well. We have some students that will come down from Dublin, but the bus doesn't come in till 9:30. We'd like to have a bus service that will come in at before 9 o'clock, and also one maybe that leaves around time schools close. Farmers, I have to say, are very good at maintaining hedgerows, and to continue to incentivise farmers to avail of the acre scheme and get more of them involved in it. And one thing I'd like the council to do more would be to make sure that road signs are kept clear on verges, on the sides of ditches, because there are some dangerous bend signs that are overgrown, and maybe a farmer could be warned first, and if they don't keep them clear, maybe a fine. But also branches overhanging the roads. There are very many of them on the N81 going from Baltinglass to Bleston. There's also trees that have been cut down. and the branches are ready to slip out onto the road. So the council are driving by there every day. They should be seeing these things and maybe making inroads to try and prevent an accident happening.
That's great, Kieran. Thank you. And that question then to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. There was a point touched on there by Peter about how cars are our primary mode of transportation in the entire country, but specifically in rural areas, and that's not going to change while there's no other options. So a huge point for me would be to start increasing the options besides using your car the entire time to try and move away from car-centric infrastructure. That myself and TD John Brady have already been putting a lot of pressure on the NTA to try and increase the times for specifically the 65 that comes through Blessington and try to extend it down to Baltinglass. Because people just, the service hasn't changed in 40 years since my mother used to come up and visit my father when they were teenagers. And people just don't have another option, and increasing the price on their petrol won't make their commute any shorter. It's just going to make it more expensive. If the options are there and they're accessible and they're frequent, people will use them. But until then, we are going to be completely reliant on our cars, and penalising that isn't going to help anyone. Thank you.
That's great, Conor. Thank you. And that question to Avril Cronin.
Thanks very much. Well, over the past number of months, we have seen a huge increase in public transport in our area. It certainly is an issue that comes up time and time again. I know my own town here of Dunlavin, we have seen a huge increase in public transport with the local link service. And across West Wicklow, we've never before seen so many bus routes in our communities. We have daily buses from Baltinglass into Dunlavin, Blessington, then into Naas. We have Dunlavin to Newbridge daily. We have weekend services going through Dunard to Glen, into Stratford, into Grange Cronin, into Baltinglass. So we really have seen a huge increase in public transport. The local link service, and that's something that I'm working with on the NTA at the moment, as well as increasing the services on the 132 bus route that actually services right across West Wicklow down as far as into the Carlow and
sorry, Ever, we're going to cut you there. So we're moving now on to Patsy Glennon.
Thank you very much. Look, obviously, as Edward has said, getting the Luas to come to Blessington is aspirational and not going to happen for a considerable time. I certainly don't think it's going to happen in the duration of the next council term. But as a more immediate step, I think there should be more frequent 65 buses to Blessington. If you missed a half-1 bus, you have to wait till the half-3 bus. I don't think it's satisfactory in this day and age. The 132 bus wouldn't stop at Hollywood Cross because it wasn't an official bus stop, despite the fact that buses were stopping there for generations. Again, we have addressed that, and it's currently stopping, albeit the official bus stop hasn't arrived yet. Again, Councillor Timmins and myself paid for a study, and there's now going to be 2 proper bus stops erected there. We have a promise for a park and ride there. It's not happening as quickly, and we have some traffic calming there. So there is things we can do as councillors to move things on in the more immediate term. Obviously, public transport is a big issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. So that question now goes to Deirdre McCormack.
Thank you. So my priorities with climate would be public transport would be a huge one, but bringing community with us and some joint up thinking. So many of the candidates have mentioned that we have seen developments and progress with our public transport here in West Wicklow, but we need some joint up thinking. The 885 was recently extended from Sallins. It was originally running from Sallins to Ballymore Eustace. Now it goes all the way to Baltinglass, which is fantastic, but they changed the timetable and they pulled the 4 o'clock bus from Sallins. So I had 16 children stuck in Naas with no way of getting home to Blessington, and they had 2 children stuck in Blessington with no way to get home to Ballymore Eustace. So myself and Jennifer Whitmore, we've worked with the NTA, we've worked with Local Link, we got that bus reinstated. But as Peter said, we're depending on our cars, but that could have been another 10 cars back on the road because someone pulled a 4 o'clock bus service and kids couldn't get home from school. So we really need to be, joint up thinking. We need to be working with communities. We need to be, as I mentioned before, achievable, smaller projects that communities can get involved in so that they can see big differences by these achievable, easy tasks. And public transport, which is
Thank you, Deirdre. And Anthony McNulty?
Yeah, well, I agree absolutely with everything that's been said about bus routes and everything. And I think we need to have more smaller buses serving the smaller areas, like, for example, Denard, for example, Hollywood, etc., and bringing people on a regular basis out to the main arterial routes connecting with the larger bus services. But on the upland habitats, what I'm looking for here, and one of the things I'll be fighting for and approaching Quilcha for, is tree mix. You know, we need more deciduous trees. We need less Sitka spruce. We need more deciduous trees. We need oaks. We need ashes. We need to combat the loss of ash that we have at the moment. Also, we've a huge problem with trees being felled that never need to be felled because people are afraid of them because they're going to fall across the road, etc. Community forests, there's 3 numbered in the climate plan. We need to see those done, pushed forward, and also for wetlands and areas where we're plains.
Thank you, Anthony. And that question now to John Mullen.
Yeah, and again, on a more positive note, I know Kieran mentioned there the acres scheme. Well, Wicklow farmers actually led all the inputs into the acres scheme through the SUES project, which is administered through the Wicklow Uplands Council, which put together Wicklow sheep farmers, for example, to invent and to discover new ways of more environmentally sheep farming on our Wicklow uplands. And I think we need to listen to our farm and agribusiness sector in Wicklow, which is a huge part of our socio-economic framework in this county. A lot of them are leading the way in changing the way they operate their businesses. And we need to reduce the red tape that they're having to endure. On public transport, we have a need for what I would call local hackney services. The reason we're not having local hackney services so people could avail of hospitality in rural areas is because the cost of insurance. And I think we need to engage with the insurance sector to make sure that we can get an affordable local hackney services in all areas of Wicklow. Thanks.
That's great, John. And with Gerry gone, we now move straight to Peter Stapleton.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think around biodiversity and Anthony's point about particularly on state-owned forestry with Quilcha, I know they are making moves towards more biodiverse variety and not just the Sitka spruce, which is positive movement. Rural transport has been kind of discussed at length. So the other thing I just will pick up from the climate action plan is the steps that Wicklow County Council take to negate the impact or the negative impact of climate change. So making sure that we're protecting our communities from increased risk of flooding and other climate related issues. I know they're certainly on the rise, and I suppose that also just how we relate to supporting those businesses and farmers that are at the mercy of the elements, which are definitely changing. So doing what we can in that regard as well.
Thank you, Peter. And again, finally, that question goes to Edward Timmins.
Yeah, a lot of what I was going to say has been covered. In particular, Patsy's point as well about going into Blessing, buses from Blessing and going into the city more often to 65, but also maybe even some kind of shuttle bus that runs from Blessington to the square where people can pick up the Lewis, etc. That would be a big thing. I think also the grants for more energy efficient homes. I mean, it's done through SEAI, and I think maybe if the council got more involved in that side of things, to do a great grant scheme for elderly people might work better at a lot more local level, because a lot of these central enough bureaucracy at local level or council level, but when you're dealing with central authorities in Ireland, you're very, very far removed from what's going on. So I think maybe council get involved in grants for more energy efficient homes, etc.
Okay, thank you, Edward. So we move now to question 6 and a little bit of a shift towards health. So the question that has been asked is, what will you do if elected to advocate for the provision of proper medical care for all, including older people in the MD, with particular reference to the new primary healthcare centres, providing adequate services and supporting local services such as Carnew Community Care. So we go back to Kieran Burke for that question.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure what, if anything, a councillor can do in that regard. I'm heightened by the fact that the Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly, has gained approval to proceed with drafting the amendment to the Health Miscellaneous Provision Bill, where pharmacists can prescribe medication. That would be a great, I suppose, advantage, because at the moment it takes 3 weeks sometimes to get an appointment with a GP. Through no fault of their own, the populations have increased and so forth. But priority obviously should be given to the young, the elderly, and the frequently ill. And I think also when designing these primary care centres, that we take into consideration old people and elderly people, and parking is a very big issue. I know that parking for elderly can be sometimes a good bit away from health centre or a doctor's office, so there should be priority given to parking for older people. There's no physiotherapists up in the primary care centre in Boston, despite the fact that there's a really good physiotherapy unit, because there's an embargo on employment. So maybe the council could do something to lift those embargoes on employment.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. And that question now to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. So in my area, I personally have never actually been able to visit a GP within Wicklow. I've always had to travel into Dublin. And I think that's only being exacerbated by the entire climate around the HSC, that a lot of the overflow from the hospital, if someone wouldn't be willing to go to the hospital, or there's no capacity, they end up having to just visit their GP anyway, which exacerbates the issue of there not being enough GPs in the area. And one of the nice things to having a bit of reach into the Dáil, being part of a party, is that you can advocate that to the to the upper level of the government. Kieran did say that there's very little you can do to actually hands-on affect the situation with GPs on a council level, but you can definitely voice the issue to the higher levels and make sure that there's a more active hand being played with GPs, that it's more economically viable for doctors to set up a practice in your community. And sorry, yeah, I had more to say, but
that's okay. That buzz is really up. No, that's great. And I've been informed that Avril has had to leave us, so I want to thank Avril for joining us this evening, and we're going to move straight on to Patsy Glennon with that question.
Patsy, yeah.
I'm muted again. Sorry about that. I worked closely with Minister of Health, Stephen Donnelly, over the last number of years, purely because he's a TD in this area and has done much work in improving health services right throughout the county. Women's health has got been opened up completely under his stewardship, and the primary care centres, I think there's 3 or 4 of them open in Wicklow since he became minister. I hear what Kieran is saying about physiotherapy not being there yet. Again, due to the embargo, I think that has to do with a spending issue through the HSE. But I understand that a lot of those posts are now being filled, certainly the ones that are more acute and urgent. So I think a health service for all has been opened up. Some people might argue too quickly, hence the demand on GPs and the difficulty in getting them. I think Conor has touched on having to go to Dublin to get a GP. I think it's an issue that himself and Peter comes from very opposite ends of this district. It's a very long district, so it's quite diverse in how we approach all this.
Thank you, Patsy. And to Deirdre McCormack.
Thank you. So the very basic thought behind Sláinte Care is that people should be able to access healthcare in their community, and Social Democrats have been calling for the full implementation of Sláinte Care since it was agreed. So this is something that I fully support and very engaged with. Through my work with Jennifer Whitmore this September, I rang every GP practice in Wicklow, the whole county, and to see who was in a position to accept patients. There was one GP practice in the whole of West Wicklow, and that was able to accept patients. Most of the people living here at the moment in Blessington are relying on out-of-hours services for their healthcare, which is completely ridiculous. My daughter, myself, when she got referred to physiotherapy, we had to travel to Kildare town to the primary care centre there. There's no public transport connection. So again, we're seeing, no joint up thinking with our services. As mentioned, there is a hiring freeze at the moment, and it's our communities that are suffering because of that. So yeah, we just need some more joined up thinking and action rather than talk.
Thank you, Deirdre. So we go to Anthony McNulty.
Yeah, well, as Kieran rightly identified earlier, there's very little we can do as councillors. We do have Stephen Donnelly, and we also have the Taoiseach now as well in our county. But all we can do is press them, but they're being pressed by everybody looking for more, with less money available. What we can do as councillors, though, is we can maintain the road network so that ambulance response times are increased and they are faster and safer for people to be picked up quickly when they are in emergency situations. We can also promote local communities where I once myself was a community first responder. And the community first responder scheme is amazing. What it does for people who are in need, maintaining people who are in pain, maintaining people who are in shock or in distress is amazing. And they have a lot of lives saved. So through empowerment of communities, letting the communities be funded and getting that funding and training for communities is vital.
Thank you, Anthony. And that question to John.
Yeah, well, we can do small things, which I'll give an example of, and we can also support communities who have the vision to do really big things. So on the small things, recently I was engaging with Specsavers and a local community hall here in Tinnahealy in Carnew to roll out an earwax removal service, a remote earwax removal service and a hearing aid repair service in these rural areas, which would enable people to access them locally rather than having to travel to big towns, which is not easy for them to do. That's a small thing. So on the big thing, I community care. I'm on the board of Carnew Community Care and part of the team there. And that's an independent living and daycare service for older people, which is a model of excellence. We've had Mary Butler down, we've had increased funding, but I think those type of services where there's a small little village of independent living units and a daycare centre in the centre of a village in every town. And that's what we should have the vision to strive towards in all of Wicklow. Thanks.
Thank you, John. That question now to Peter Stapleton.
Yeah, look, absolutely one issue that you continuously get on the door is lack of availability of GP services. And so I have tried talking at length with different GPs, both retired GPs, up and coming GPs, to get their views. As I said, not sure what I'll be able to do about it, but just understand where the root of the problem lies. And funnily, they've struggled enough to put their finger on it about what exactly could be done. Retired GPs will talk about the hours that they used to work, over their careers. People always had access to them from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9:30 at night. That's not ideal. Returning to where that's the situation, we won't encourage people to come and work as GPs in rural Ireland if that's the case. And then obviously with the massive increase in provision of free GP care to children, and also expansion of medical cards, you'll see an increase of people availing of GP services. And so one thing I'd be pro, which may be slightly controversial, but I'll get it in, is a nominal charge for visiting your GP.
Thank you, Peter. And finally on that question, we go to Edward Timmins.
Yeah, thanks. As Kieran said at the outset, as councillors, we have no power to increase medical services. I'm hoping that under the new health board system, which is going to become more regionalised, the councillors will have a say and will have more influence, because, as I may have said earlier, all decisions and policies are too centrally governed in this country. They're not spread out to the regions and the counties where people know and are much closer to the problems. In terms of lack of GPs, this is clearly because there's not enough been trained in the country. I know a few years ago they did increase the number of places, but they just need to increase the number of training places. You need to get 625 points, I think, nearly in your Leaving Cert plus the HPAT to get into medicines. Lots of people who would be very good medical people, but in this country they're effectively discriminated against because they have to reach a huge bar academically. So I just think need more places, and therefore the points would come down and more people would go into it. And that's a way to solve the problem. I can't understand what hasn't been done. Thanks.
Thank you, Edward. So we're moving on to question 7 now. And question 7 is in relation to crime. So the question that came in was, with regard to crime, what would you like to see happening locally to make our communities feel safer for all, including migrants and asylum seekers? And we go back to Kieran Burke for that question.
Yeah, thanks very much. I was recently, 23rd of April, at the Wicklow County Council Joint Policing Committee public meeting in the Avon, where there was presentations made on crime statistics by Superintendent Rory Sheriff and Chief Superintendent Derek Hughes. So one of the things that really helps the community, and I've been part of the town team in Blessington that got this going, was cameras in the town. And the Gardaí have stated that that has really helped them in fighting crime in the area and helped in antisocial behaviour and in sorting that out around Dunn Stores area and so forth. Also, I asked at the meeting for a community Garda to be reinstated in the town. We have one in Baltinglass, there isn't one in Blessington. The answer is that every Garda is community Garda, but I think there should be a designated community Garda. There was one there before and it really helped. We also have brought into the school the Gardaí to talk about antisocial behaviour, Lifesaver project and road traffic accidents, and also the Garda Youth Awards. So to educate students and to educate the public.
Thank you, Kieran. And that question now to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. I would love to see a re-empowerment of the Garda throughout the community. That I feel like not only have the priorities on Garda activity kind of been mismanaged through very harsh quotas that they have to catch with how many people they pull up about car tax and everything like that, that I would like to see them re-empowered in a way that they don't need to fear pursuing criminals. Personally, I have a motorcycle, and you're seeing the crash where a guard is being held responsible for two people who were joyriding and caused an accident themselves. That ever since that, guards are being told not to pursue people who have stolen vehicles, and it's a very common thing that they're almost afraid to perform their duties. I'd like to see guards brought more into the community and be able to focus on the antisocial behaviour that's happening without recompense back onto themselves.
Thank you, Conor. We're going to move now to Patsy Glennon.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I feel well equipped to talk about this. Having spent my life, a large portion of my life in the Guards, and I'm now practicing as a barrister in the criminal courts. But I suppose an immediate thing that's happening here, and a lot of you may not be aware of it, but my fellow councillors will be aware of it. The superintendent's position in Baltinglass has been removed, and that certainly will lessen our significance in terms of policing for the entire of West Wicklow. As a municipal authority, we have drafted a letter. We're writing to the Garda Commissioner about it. We're not happy about it because it leaves us further from the management table. We're going to be managed from Wicklow. There won't be any superintendent in West Wicklow. So the 6 councillors have unanimously agreed that we write to the Commissioner and the Taoiseach about this issue. It's certainly not good from a policing point of view. Policing, we have, and I'm out of time. Sorry, I was just going to say that CCD footage is obviously important, and that has been done and blessed, and it's a big help. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. And to Deirdre McCormack.
So I know Kieran mentioned earlier the community guard. So we were meant to get a community guard in Blessington ahead of the COVID pandemic, and then kind of everything changed. So we didn't get our community guard here. So I think that's something that we really need to be looking at. And also, if you look at the figures for the station here in Blessington, we have lost the number of guards. It's gone down here, even though our population is growing. I know in Baltinglass the numbers have risen, but I think, you know, the number of guards stationed somewhere should be in line with the population growth. But also, I think there's another way to approach this as well. If we want to have a safe and strong community, we need to work with our community, and it comes back to social inclusion again, what we were talking about earlier. I know that the group, the Dunlavin Parents Group, I spoke about them earlier. They had a really great event during the week where they welcomed the new asylum seekers that were part of their community in. They had an event, the local guard was there, and there was, you know, it was a welcoming event. And by embracing people and making them part of our community, that's how we create safe, strong communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. And now we go to Anthony McNulty.
Yes, I echo a lot of what Deirdre said there about, you know, communities and getting the community involved with the community Garda. Rural areas need to be policed by car. The day of the bobby on the beat, the Garda on the corner are gone. We have less Gardaí to do more work. They're under a lot of pressure. Cameras are one part of the solution, but if we can get people engaged with members of An Garda Síochána at a community liaison officer level, where people learn ways to secure their property, to make sure that they don't become victims of crime, that's a huge empowerment. And it with the advocate of cameras, the use of cameras in areas, that drives criminals away, and the opportunist criminals, particularly where there are good road networks or fast road networks. We've seen lots of initiatives from An Garda Síochána, particularly around the winter months, and they all need to be supported through our communities as well.
Thank you, Anthony. And now we go to John Mullen.
Yeah, I'd like to remind everyone who has spoken so far on this. And again, I think what we need to do is engaging through the JPC. And I know Anne Haplin, for example, there is always at the JPC and engaging with the Gardaí. The trust between the people and the Gardaí is what makes our policing system work, as Patsy Glennon has served in it all his life with distinction. And I think when it comes to the asylum seekers and migrant issue, what we're seeing is we have to tackle the misinformation that's out there and deal with facts and trust our policemen and trust our superintendents and give them the support they need to protect all of us, because it is a very dangerous world out there at the moment. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I also think we need to have a very serious conversation about drug use in this country and in this district and in every town and village. And the crime that's directly emanating from that, whether it be road safety to other types of crime. And I think that's a conversation we're going to have all of us over the next couple of years.
Thank you, John. We now go to Peter Stapleton.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on that point about drug use throughout, which is very prominent throughout the whole country now. And I think it was probably a year ago now that I think our now Taoiseach Simon Harris was talking to all about the failure of particularly young people of all ages, to make that link between drug use and crime in the places that they live and their families live, and families can potentially feel unsafe in because of the impact that drug gangs or just drugs in an environment are having. So completely echo that. And then, of course, echo that we need to do what we can to support our community Gardaí, our Gardaí generally, and do what we can to shout for additional resources where they're required in across all of West Wicklow.
Thank you, Peter. And finally, that question now to Edward Timmins.
One thing is Garda on the beat. You know, the more Garda we see on the beat, the better, in my view, because policing isn't just about reducing crime, it's also about giving the public confidence that they feel safe. And I think Garda on the beat, walking the streets of our towns and villages, makes people feel more secure and brings people closer to, you know, helping enforcement. And just happy to say from that PPN meeting in the Avon there 2 weeks ago that Kieran referred to, they did say they have increased the beat, certainly in Blessington, you know, where it's needed. There has been a significant increase in the number of Garda on the beat. The other thing, obviously, is CCTV, and that's been referred to. CCTV in Blessington has been a huge success, and I've also lobbied for it in Baltinglass, and that will be rolled out over the next couple of years, and I've no doubt that will also be a success. Thanks.
That's great, Edward. Thank you. And we've only really 10 minutes left for a final question, so we're actually going to skip the next question because that was focused on public transport, and we have touched on that a little bit. So we're going to go straight on to the final question that was issued. And that question was, how will councillors encourage research and development of methods of storing and generating power which don't require the environmental destruction caused by mining for lithium? Will councillors support farmers in the production of hemp and rapeseed as an alternative to mining for lithium and other so-called critical materials? So that question goes first to Kieran Burke.
Yeah, of course. If elected, I would be a strong advocate in support of farmers that they would receive any type of grant funding available to cultivate hemp or rapeseed biofuel. Like in relation to hemp, like it's a carbon storage. It helps to reduce, obviously, global warming. A hectare of hemp would sequester 9 to 15 tons of carbon dioxide, same as probably a young forest. So there's also, it's very resistant to disease, so there's no need for spray with fungicides, insecticides, reducing that footprint on the environment. It prevents soil erosion, very good for biodiversity. And I think any support farmers could get into production of hemp and also rapeseed oil would be obviously welcome in Wicklow. It does need deep soil, but I don't know how good Wicklow soil would be for the growing of hemp, but I would support farmers in all their efforts to grow it.
Thank you, Kieran. And that question now to Conor Byrne.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I think this is a really astute question because it really touches on the fact that if we go from fossil fuels to batteries, we're kind of trading one finite resource for another, one that needs to be brought up out of the ground and damaging either our environment or a third world country somewhere, which is essentially the same globally. So I would definitely advocate for alternative forms of fuel, whether it's biofuel or even looking further into the future, hydrogen fuels. I think in the coming decades, all of our cars will either be a biofuel or hydrogen fuel. I think battery powered cars are just a stopgap to get us off of fossil fuel as quickly as possible. And in regards to that, while there's not much movement we could make in West Wicklow at the moment for hydrogen, I would definitely encourage the education of teenagers to move into scientific areas so that they could push forward green energy and green technologies. Currently, a lot of our secondary schools are mostly prefabs, and we're really trying to push for them to be developed and modernized.
Great, Conor, thank you. And to Patsy Glennon.
Yes, look, I'm support obviously what Kieran and Conor has said. I'm not an authority on biofuels. I generally don't speak at length about things that I'm not an authority on, but obviously would support farmers in doing anything that would help the environment, whatever it is. And hydrogen fuel seems to be the way of the future, but we're just not there yet. So that's as much as I'd say on the subject. Thank you.
Okay, Patsy, thank you. So we now move on to Deirdre.
Thank you. So being brutally honest, as councillors, we wouldn't have a massive influence on being able to encourage research into alternative fuels on a local level. I suppose on a council level, we would be able to encourage the fleet, the council-owned vehicles to look at alternative methods of fuel and that type of way. Nationally, the Social Democrats are big supporters of research into alternative fuels. We included in our alternative budget, investment in solar panels, wind energy, and as well, we have said that if in government that we would want to look into the hemp industry in Ireland and kind of make it easier for the processing and to investigate it further as an alternative fuel method. So yes, I'm all for research, but I want to be realistic about what we can achieve as councillors. But yes, of course, I'd be supporting farmers in alternative fuel energy and that. So thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. So now to Anthony McNulty.
Thank you. Well, obviously this is certainly my bailiwick with the threat of lithium mining on my leash, and it's what brought me into politics. So grant funding and assistance and the looking and the assistance with licensing around the growing of hemp are all areas that have to be certainly encouraged and looked at from a council level. Also the understanding that there are massive alternatives to the lithium-ion battery out there. And also another thing I would be pushing for is to stop the greenwashing and the sacrifice zones that we have in this country. The greenwashing saying lithium is sustainable. It's not sustainable. Once we start digging it out of the ground, it's finite. Also, once we start mining, if we were to start mining here, it encourages 4 other mines that have to support that mine as well, because you need 4 other elements to go into that battery. I think we have an opportunity to be the first hydrogen powered community, and I think we could encourage that through that information. emissions.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. And now on to John Mullen.
Yeah, look, I agree totally with Anthony, and I've worked with Anthony over a long number of years on this absolutely daft idea to try and destroy our environment in South Wicklow and Carlow in order to extract lithium. It follows other daft ideas to try and turn the Wicklow uplands into an industrial wind turbine farm. So we have to really be smart in how we address climate change and adaptation. And yes, the combination of biofuels, the science of how to refine the biofuels to make it viable, and then the farming sector to get them to grow it and to make it viable for them. So they're the partnerships that are going to deliver the solutions to climate change. As you know, on wind farming, we're going offshore now, which is obviously makes sense, and it should have been that from the start instead of industrial onshore turbines. And mining, the idea of mining is just daft, and I was just genuinely surprised that a Green Minister came to Wicklow County Council, and when I asked him the question, surely you're ruling out lithium mining, he wouldn't do it. And that is just absolutely crazy.
Thank you, John. And to Peter Stapleton.
Yeah, I think you'll see from some of the responses that there's a lot tied up in that question, but fundamentally what it deals with is this concept of critical materials and research within the move to a just transition for climate change. And I think what is important is that anything we do is founded in research. So absolutely going to support research into the different necessary materials for that transition. And also making sure that the use of any of those materials or any steps that need to be taken are not just founded in research, but also in common sense. And that's what comes back to the point of a lithium mine in West Wicklow. It's not NIMBYism to know that even if it was the savior and a renewable material that needs to be mined, it doesn't make sense to have a hole in the Wicklow mountain. So
thank you, Peter. And to Edward Timmins.
Yeah, again, it's quite a specialist subject that I'm not expert on, and I won't pretend I am. I have spoken at length to advocates, warning about the lithium mining down in Wileisha at length, and what they're saying is very, very concerning and very, very plausible. So yes, I would be very concerned about lithium mining in South West Wicklow. As regards farmers again, and what I would say generally is farming in this country is primarily, dairy or beef. That our whole farming profile is too narrow, and certainly anything that encourages broader use of our land. We've the most fertile land in the world, and we import a huge amount of our food from places like Holland, which are not as fertile. Anything that broadens out the use of our farmland, including the rapeseed oil, and that would be very welcome. Thanks.
Okay, Edward, that's great. And you can all breathe a sigh of relief. Our 2 hours are drawing to a close. I'd like to thank all the candidates who took the time to attend tonight and for the obvious passion and interest that they brought to the questions that they answered. I'm sure at times working under that time pressure felt a bit like when you're trying to pack your bag at the Aldi checkout and everyone's queuing up behind you. But look, I think towards the end we nailed it, and it is a difficult thing to do, and I know lots of you probably had more that you would like to say, but it was critical for us to be able to keep this evening moving and to be able to cover such a broad range of topics. So thank you very much. I'd like to also thank all the audience and attendees who came along tonight to listen. It really is a critical part of our democracy that the citizens know what their potential candidates are going to offer, and that citizens are offered the chance to be able to engage directly with candidates on these issues that matter to them and that really impact their lives in the communities on a daily basis. Obviously, I think it's really critical, and it's a really important move that after tonight, these videos will be made available for wider consumption. So, you know, these answers aren't just confined to those who were able to join us here tonight, but the broader community are going to be able to watch back and listen to what the candidates were able to say as well, which I think is fantastic. So that's me done, I think, for the evening. I'd now like to hand you over to Anne Haplin, who's representing Wicklow Older Persons Council, and she is going to actually close out this evening's session. So Anne, over to you.
And you're on mute.
Sorry about that, I was on mute. You were all marvellous, that's all I can say. Very, very well informed and very honest answers to your questions, I have to say. So on behalf of the County Wicklow Partnership and the Wicklow Older People's Council, we express our sincere gratitude to you all for participation in tonight's event. We would also like to thank Sarah for the wonderful job she did facilitating the event. And we trust that we have offered our members a sound introduction to all the candidates. It should provide them with an understanding of each of the candidates' interests, as well as the work and the issues that they would prioritise if elected on the 7th of June. We hope that the meeting has presented the candidates with a better understanding of our members' concerns and priorities. If they are elected on the 7th of June, we trust that they will work towards achieving a positive outcome, as many as we could get, and if not, some of them on all of these issues. As Conor, our PPN Secretariat, mentioned earlier, we received more questions than we had time to answer. Therefore, we created a document that contains all the questions submitted to our members. We have taken the initiative to share this document with the candidates to provide them with the information that will support their work on our behalf, and also we will use it to measure their progress and work in the future. A link to these documents will be included in the next PPN's newsletter. We encourage you to check out our PPN election special newsletter that was sent on April 26th. All our newsletters are available to view on the PPN website. We also want to draw the attention of the candidates to our visions for community well-being that were developed from extensive consultations in 2018 and reviewed again during consultations in 2022. And these can be found on the PPN website as well. The Municipal District, Baltinglass Municipal District Vision for Community Wellbeing simply states that Baltinglass Municipal District is an integral part of County Wicklow, where all people enjoy fulfilled lives in vibrant communities within a cared for natural environment. We hope that the collaboration and engagement from this evening continues and that we can work together achieving this vision. Once again, on behalf of the Older People's Council, the PPN and the presenters tonight, I wish the candidates, or we wish the candidates well in their endeavours and thank them and our members for attending this event tonight. Good night and thanks again, and it was very well done. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.